want them.
Hello everyone, thank you all for being here, and this is the next installment for my Noob to Warlord workshop series. Today we're talking about body mechanics, and specifically I'll be emphasizing the form of when attacking or throwing shots and movement to avoid really injury. This is going to be covering some of the topics in our day one fundamentals video. But again, emphasis on form. Additionally, I'm going to talk about differentiating power and speed. A lot of us, I know, when you start getting up into fighting, you think, all right, I gotta hit somebody faster, but that often comes into I'm hitting them harder as well. So differentiating that a little bit, and then also demonstrating some speed as well as some power generation techniques. All right, so first, talking about power and speed, right? So these two concepts are connected, and that's just like based off of physics, right? But when it comes to power comes a lot from how much mass you're putting into it, how much of your body you're throwing into the shot, whereas your speed is really like how fast you're moving, okay? So for power, you're really wanting to optimize the amount of energy you're putting into the shot, right? Like, and pretty much, since this is amp guard, when we talk about power generation, the main point is to break through somebody's guard. If I'm throwing this like real block, I'm trying to get through this block, but if I throw a power shot, I'm trying to break through the block, right? In heavier touch games like Bell or DAG, power shots are more common because it's a significant force or contact. All right, but just in terms of like power shots, when you throw the shot and you come back, you're primarily reliant on, for the return, the recoil of the shot, right? I'm waiting to hit that and then come back, because if I throw really hard and I miss, I have all this momentum going, and I keep going, right? Whereas if I hit, now I can follow through, okay? A lot of your power shots, you're using your full body or certain parts of your body. When I generate power, here, let's come this way a little bit. When I'm generating power, I'm using a lot of my hips. So I'm rotating my hips to generate the power because I'm moving my whole body, and so that's where a lot of the energy is coming into the shot. Additionally, you can generate power by moving into, right? Now I'm not just moving my upper body, I'm throwing my entire weight into the shot, okay? Obviously, in amp guard, please be very careful. This is, as you throw like stronger and stronger shots, this is how you hurt people. And it's not really necessary for this game. In amp guard, we're mostly focused on speed. This is kind of like a speed tag game. And really what you're trying to optimize is getting to your opponent as fast as possible, right? I can hit Sean just as fast or faster by throwing this like quick shot, flat wrap, and it's not taking nearly as much time, and I don't have to recoil as much, or I don't have much cooldown time, rather, when I throw this heavy chop. Okay, so with speed shots, or when you're throwing fast, the difference between power is that the return or the reload time, you're focused a little bit, you're using a little bit on hitting, but what I'm also doing is as I'm about to extend, I'm beginning to pull the shot back. Does that make sense? Because now, if I throw this full power shot, I'm trying to blow through the guard, but for the speed shot, as I'm coming here, I'm beginning to pull the shot back. I'm already trying to move back into a guard position as fast as I can. So now I can recoil, and I can load up and shoot again in the chamber. Additionally, with speed shots, it's kind of important to optimize your like your path, because if I want to like hit Sean's hip, I can do this very wide arc, but if I do this shorter arc, I can hit Sean faster, right? Versus like that. I know it's kind of exaggerated, but the shorter the path, the less time you're throwing in that shot. Additionally, when it comes to speed shots, we have a couple of options in our shotting in our shot styles. I've talked about we can throw chops or we can throw wraps. So talking about distances, our chops are typically the fastest option, because here I'm just throwing and I'm coming back, whereas with the wrap, I have to my sword has to come all the way around to hit, or if I'm coming out, my sword has to follow this entire arc before I begin to hit somebody, whereas if I just chop, it's just this. Okay? So that's all dependent on like your arc length and how far the sword has to travel. Additionally, when you're doing speed shots, you don't need to throw your entire body into the shot, right? Like, I'm not trying to generate a bunch of power. A lot of the momentum is coming from just my arm and my shoulder. I'm not rotating my body a bunch to break through a guard. Additionally, with speed shots, we can do repetitive or multi-shot chops where I'm just doing this. All I'm doing is, as I'm throwing, I'm retracting at the same time to just quick fire or rapid fire. Whereas if I want to do a wrap, I have to continually rotate, and it's not as fast, right? Because I'm doing this sort of like windmill, which I wouldn't really recommend. Whereas if I'm just doing this chop, I'm coming back and forth, back and forth. I can almost do the chop as fast, hitting Sean versus just in the air. So, right, versus it's almost the same speed because I'm pulling the shot back as I'm throwing it, or right at the extension of my as my arm goes out. Okay, so now let's talk about the shot mechanics that we've talked about in the day one, as well as some of my other videos. And so for the chops itself, right, like we want to know how to throw these shots without hurting ourselves and doing it in proper form, so we have the best control. So for chops, right, we've talked about chops a whole bunch of different ways. Check out the videos earlier in this series to get a better idea of what shots do what, and what is better for targeting what areas. But for a chop, I would akin this or relate this to more of like punching, right? So if I'm in my guard and I want to throw a chop, I'm just going to extend my arm out like I'm punching forward, right? And you can do this overhand or underhand, okay? When you do this, a lot of the force is coming from you extending like your triceps, contracting your triceps, and you're also throwing your shoulder forward, okay? The thing that I would be very cautious of and telling everybody is be very conscientious about your elbow, because if you throw these shots really, really hard, your elbow is taking all of that strain. So just like be conscientious about it. Don't go full force all the time. Build that strength up in your joints, or else you will hurt yourself. Okay, so going from the chop, there's now the flat wrap, where the flat wrap is your force is really, or sorry, your flat wrap is here, and then you're just rotating your wrist, right? Or not your wrist, sorry, your arm. So I'm here, and I just rotate. I'm not bending my wrist at all. I'm just rotating my arm around in 180 degrees. And so where the force is really coming from is your shoulder, right? And you can even torque it a little or change it a little bit, where I now implement my body into it. So I can go like this, or I can go like that, right? That's how I can generate a little bit more force if I throw my body, right? We talked about your power is coming from how much mass you're throwing into the shot. If I throw this versus I throw that, the last one was harder, right? It hurt more. You're doing great. You're just not going to be able to use that arm by the end of the day. When you're throwing wraps, always be very conscientious about your wrist. Lock your wrist. When people throw wraps, either flat wraps or full wraps, a lot of people like to throw their wrist out. When you do this, you're putting all of that load into your wrist. And this is a very small, weak joint compared to your elbow or your shoulder. So I always lock my wrist up, and I'm just rotating my arm, right? All of the movement's coming in my elbow, okay? So going from the flat wrap, right, where I'm just here, there's now the full wrap, where it's more accentuated, or more exaggerated, sorry. And now the rotation, or the force is coming for like the full arm extension, right? Where flat wrap here, I'm just coming out, whereas the full wrap, I'm extending my arm out to get the wrap. We could also do it on the flip side, right, where there's this outside wrap, where I'm coming out. You can't really do a flat wrap. You kind of can to get the inside arm, but if I want the full outside wrap, I'm coming out. Again, I'm throwing my arm out, wrist is locked, and I flip. I flip my arm over. So your power is really coming from this arm shoot. Kind of thinking about it as like you're throwing a flat wrap and a chop at the same time. So if you build up these mechanics where you start off, you kind of throw a chop. I would throw the chop underhand, right, for the full wrap, and then to get the full wrap, you just flick your hand over like it's a flat wrap, right, where you go boom. And so the difference is you're now doing the full rotation. You can do it in two components, right? Step A, where you throw out and then you flick in. Whereas when you actually do this in a combat setting, I'm doing all of these steps, these two steps at the same time. All right. Additionally, we have scoops. Scoops, a lot of the, well, move your arm. So the scoop, right? This is our scoop shot where I'm trying to get the hips. A lot of the power from your scoop shots is really coming from your shoulder and then a little bit of your chest. And then you also get some power from your arm retraction, right? So here I'm coming out. I'm throwing my sword out, in, throwing it in, and then I'm also pulling the sword back. So when I'm doing this, I'm making these little circles, right? This is this continual rotation. So this is the scoop, right? I'm scooping the hip. I'm scooping up. You can do the same thing for the opposite side, but what you're doing is you're now doing the reverse circle, right? Where I'm coming down, up, down, up. Let's flip sides. Right, same thing. Reverse circle. So I come down, up, down and up. So again, a lot of the energy is coming here. I'm just rotating my arm and then a little bit of the pullback. And yeah, that's the basics of the scoops. With your stabs, as always, whenever you're stabbing people, please be careful. This is like the easiest way to hurt somebody. When you stab, it's kind of like you're chopping, but you extend your wrist out, right? So you stab down. You can stab up, but again, always be careful when you stab people because you can slide up and hit them in the throat. Be very careful with it. But mechanically, It's the chop, but you're now bending your wrist. Also, please don't try to generate power with stabs. It's not necessary. If you're like trying to generate power with stabs, you're kind of being a dick. I'm just gonna be honest. Okay, most people don't need to be like skewered to like for a kebab. Like it'll be okay. The last body mechanic thing that I'm going to talk about is level changes. So I kind of showed this already with the level change with this flat wrap, right, where I can do this, but then I can throw that chop where I'm now moving down. Me doing this bend, this is a level change, right? I'm changing levels. Okay, so there's a couple ways that you could do this. Do level changes in different aspects. You can bend purely at the knees, right? My weight in my natural stance is always in the middle of my knees. So me bending down, again, be very conscientious of your body. Not everybody can do this. If you can't, try to work yourself up. Be conscientious of what you can and cannot do, and don't hurt yourself. Okay? So I can just bend at the knees to do the chop. Additionally, I can do the level change by stepping forward. Boom. Right? If I'm going to do this, though, and I'm level changing, be conscientious about, like, what you're exposing. That's all kind of covered in my combat theory video. Check that out as well if you're curious. But when you're throwing this, like, step, if you throw your body over your knee, you're going to have a really hard time recovering. Just because now I have to lift my whole body up. The last way to do it, a level change, is you purely just bend at the hips. Boom. My legs are staying still, but I'm throwing still. When you do this, you're going to put a lot of strain on your hamstrings and a lot of strain on your lower back. Be careful. Again, like, level changes is probably one of the most easy ways to hurt yourself in this game. So, like, stretch, build up the strength, just don't go ham and then you hurt yourself and then you're out of the game for a while. Okay? Lastly, with the level change, there's when you're bending at the hips, there's two different ways to do it. You can bend on the inside, you bend on the outside. As you could see, when I like fell over, it's harder to do it on this outside because my weight, I have to push my knees this way to put my body in this angle, whereas when I'm this way, I can just kick my ass out, and it gives me more mobility. I will typically always throw on the inside, or I will just push my weight in front of me, and I'm throwing my ass back, pop it, lock it, drop it, something like that. Kids these days, to get the level change, okay? Whenever you're throwing stuff, or you're fighting an amp guard, whatever you're doing, be conscientious of what your body tells you. Your body's not gonna, if it tells you, hey, this isn't a good idea, don't do it, or work yourself up to it. Yeah, I think everything that I talked about today is also a good idea to drill, and just working through the mechanics of, all right, I throw this chop, I'm trying to throw straight out, I'm throwing this punch out, right? Just drill that motion. Throw 1,000 chops, 100 chops, 10 chops a day, whatever you can, right? Throw it overhand, then throw it underhand, right? Throw the flat wrap, throw the full wrap out. Each of these simple movements can be drilled all on its own. Doing the level change, boom. All I'm doing is just dropping, boom, right? Doing the hip thrust, or the hip twist with the slash, right? Each of these aspects can be drilled. But again, be conscientious of what your body tells you. You don't want to hurt yourself. Injury is not a good time in this game. Yeah, and I don't like seeing people get hurt. Well, that's all I have. Thank you, Sean, for being my dummy and letting me abuse you. And I look forward to seeing you next time on my Newb to Warlord series. Thanks.